Dr. Tatsuya Mori has been here for the last 23 years, I believe. Is that correct? So 1995 was your first convention? Yeah. Him and many other members of the Japanese Farriers Association. He's the technical advisor for education, the Center of Japanese Farrier Association, the only organization for certifying farriers in Japan. The JFA is dedicated to animal welfare and the advancement of equine and cattle industry. It is a remarkable group. There's 55 regional affiliated chapters and a total of 1,500 active certified technicians. Since 1988, Dr. Mori has taught anatomy, physiology, pathology, therapeutic hoof care for students at the Farrier School and other farriers, veterinarians, and other professionals. Dr. Mori is a graduate of, I knew I was going to run into one, and I apologize. Sato, close, remotely close, no, okay. University Graduate School of Veterinary Medicine, that's located in Tokyo. It is my pleasure, my distinct pleasure, to introduce this year's Jim Linzy clinician, Dr. Tatsuya Mori.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tatsuya Mori. I came from Japan and have been working in Japan Farrier Association for 30 years as teacher for anatomy, foot disease, and therapeutic horseshoeing. This is maybe 20 times participating at the AFA convention. Thank you very much for you attending my presentation today. It is my great pleasure and honor to give this presentation. I appreciate the American Farriers Association, Mr. John Johnson, Convention Chairman, that gave me an excellent chance. However, I am not a native English speaker, and ordinary time, Japanese person speak only Japanese language. That is much different from your language. Probably it will be very hard, tough time for everybody because my English is very poor. Therefore, I would like to show you a lot of slides and a few movies. And I'm going to give my best effort to explain it in English. My presentation consists of 3 parts. The first part, I would like to introduce Japan Farrier Association, or I1. In second, this is the main content of my presentation. I would like to explain a scientific data that have been researched by our association. The content is about electromyography of muscle of lower front limb, and discussing about the effect of long-heeled shoe. In the last part, I will explain and show short movies about part of the horseshoeing in Japan that are different style from the United States. Let's start with the first part. I would like to introduce of Japan Farrier Association. How do you feel about seeing this picture? Do you think that Japanese farriers would trim cow hoof? No, cow hoof are trimmed by cow hoof trimmer in my country. However, both of those in this picture are our members. Our association is comprised of farriers and cow hoof trimmers who register in Japan. Both farriers and cow hoof trimmers are certified by Japan Farrier Association. It seems only in Japan that farriers and cow hoof trimmers constitute the same organization. This slide shows the background of horse and farrier industry in my country. In 1868, we had a very big change in politics and society all over Japan, and the open of our country to commercial and diplomatic intercourse foreign country, which was called Meiji restriction. Before it, our country was samurai world that looks like movies. Therefore, our horseshoeing history began at 150 years ago. In that time, Japanese government had to develop all industries and army. It was necessary a good horses for weapon and transportations. Originally, the government and the military service developed the horse industry, which led to starting of Farrier law and the national licensing system at 1890. After end of Second World War, politics and society were changed, but horses were necessary for power job. However, about the 1950s, there was a big decrease in the number of horses, as the number of motor cars was sudden increase, and the number of cars has also increased. So many farriers had to change their workshop from horse to cow. Farriers changed their job to cow hoof trimmer. With such a background, our association has started certification of cow hoof trimmers. Furthermore, in 1970, Japanese government had abolished the Farrier's law and the transmission to Farrier certification system by our association. With such a historical background, our association is comprised of both farriers and cow hoof trimmers. There is a role, function, and structure of Japan Farrier Association. I think they are not so different from American Farriers Association without cow hoof trimmer division. This slide shows the number of certified farriers and the farriers classification on our association. I think there are 3 levels of certification in American Farriers Association. We also have 3 levels of certification classes. For the bottom, approved class, senior class, and master class. Most of owners and trainers of horse should call on these certified farrier for their horseshoeing. In other words, uncertified farrier do not horseshoe in Japan, as we had a history of having a national licensing system. About 95% of the certified farriers are members of Japan Farriers Association. One more. There is 70,000 horses in my country, and 60% of them are related to horse racing. This slide shows a method of becoming a certified farrier in Japan. In order to qualify, all applicants must enroll in our education center and study for 1 year in it. Education center is the only farrier school in Japan, and we can accept up to 60 people. In the past, there were times when we had about 50 applicants, but in recent years, it has been declining. Our students study while living in a dorm for a year. they can take an approved class exam at the end of the course. Students who successful both written and practical test can become an approved class certified farriers. Senior class farrier exams are open to farriers who have 5 years experience on approved class farrier. Furthermore, 10 years experience on senior class farrier can take master class farrier examination. Winner of national farriers contest can take the master class farrier exam early. I would like to introduce education center where I work. You already know here is the only farrier school in Japan. In addition, it is not only used for farrier students, but also for education of certified farriers. We host national farrier contest here every October. This facility features a long corridor to inspect the movement of the horse. More students have to warming up before practice training. Sometimes an American woman is also warming up with them. This farrier shop has a space for 10 horses for shoeing. There are 10 anvil and 10 cork forges. This slide shows a lecture and a practice training for horse riding. We also have horse riding training in our class, as it is good training for the handling of horses for our students. We can receive full cooperation from Japan Racing Association, such as staff, horse, and facilities. Here is a dining room in the dormitory where students live. All the private room is single room. From here, I would like to explain about the research by our association. We have been doing some research, little by little, much experience and science on horseshoeing. Some of them have been done collaboration with Japan Racing Association and the university. Basically, the research data I will show have been obtained from experiments in collaboration with 3 persons. You probably may know the person in the middle photo. Dr. Aoki has been to the AFA convention many times. He is also an important person for horseshoeing and biomechanics in my country. Before showing our experimental data, I would like to talking about the reason why we have started researching about electric myography called EMG. Traditional idea about the muscle function are discussed from the viewpoint of anatomical structure of a horse's body. These anatomical ideas are applied to muscle that are related with direction of joint movement. And the limb is viewed as always hanging as the upper picture. However, in real horse locomotion, the feet are staying on the ground, supporting the body weight during the stance phase, as in the raw picture. And the feet are never moved even if the muscle act forcefully. So we started to research the EMG to know the true function of muscle and make use it in horseshoeing. I would like to discuss about the muscle function at the raw front limb in real horse referring with the data of EMG in conjunction with the high-speed video system. This diagram shows the anatomical structure of horse's raw front limb. As you know, the superficial suspensory ligament has no muscle part, adult horse. The superficial digital flexor muscle, deep digital flexor muscle, and the common digital extensor muscle have a muscle portion above the carpal joint and have a long tendinous segment below the joint. The activity of those three muscles were measured during standing and natural gait, including canter, by EMG, using wire electrode insert in the muscle bellies. This slide shows a diagram of our experiment. EMGs of three muscles are EMG of three muscle and changes of hoof strain were recorded with the telemeter system. Horse locomotion were photographed with a high-speed camera that is able to take 200 frames per second. The pulse generators synchronize the EMG data and the photographic data. Fine wire electrode insert into the thin gauge needle. This needle was inserted into the muscle and quickly removed. The electrode was able to remain into the muscle. Electrode was connected to the lead line, and then the transmitter put in the bag. This slide shows measuring EMG or muscle at the hip, but we have done basically same connection and method. A paper strain gauge was adhered on the front foot to record the change of strain of the hoof. It was able to identify the stance phase and swing phase for the hoof by the strain gauge. The horse without a rider was saddled, and the man led at a walk, trot, or canter, like this photo. Then a rider mounted and guided the horse at walk, trot, and canter with a loose rein. There is a recording equipment. Dr. Aoki have a mic and singing a song, but here is never karaoke pub. There are EMG data of deep digital flexor muscle and common digital extensor muscle during standing. The extensor muscle had no activity, but the flexor muscle had continuous activity during standing. This tonic activity shows that the muscle is acting as one of the anti-gravity postural muscles. This recording shows EMG activity of common digital extensor muscle and deep digital flexor muscle of both front limb during walking with a rider. Two curves at the bottom show the strain on the hoof wall. The extensor has only short activity just before foot round. The first activity of the flexor muscle begins before landing, and it is synchronized with the extensor indicated by the green arrow. The second period of flexor's activity appears during 2/3 of the stance phase, from landing to past the mid-support phase, indicated by the blue arrow. There is no activity of these muscles at the breakover, indicated by the red circle. These data was measured at the trot with the rider. The activity of the muscle appear with the same timings as those at the walk, although amplitude of activity are increasing. These data was measured at canter with a rider. The timing of activity of these two muscles is basically the same as in the other gaits. This diagram shows normalized faces of EMG activity of common digital extensor and deep digital flexor muscles during the step cycle of different gaits. Each bar of different color represents a different force and shows the EMG activity at each phase of the stride. There is little difference in the phases of EMG activities between horses and between gaits. This EMG shows the activity of superficial digital flexor muscle and deep digital flexor muscle in a cantering horse. These two flexor muscles act exactly same time during locomotion. This diagram shows again the activity patterns of the two flexor and extensor muscles with a stick picture of front limb in horse during locomotion. These extensor and flexor muscles have short activity just before landing, and it is synchronized. Then, these flexor muscles have activity again from landing to past the mid-support phase. However, there is no activity of these muscles at the breakover. I would like to discuss the muscle function in the low front limb, referring to the muscle activity shown here previously. This slide shows the mechanics of the digital segment during the swing phase. Throughout the swing phase, except just before landing. Two different forces, inertia and gravity, are always acting on each digital bone. The total force resulting from those loose ends, the digital joint, when there is no activity of the muscle. If the foot round while in this loose condition, there is a risk of misstep during running. Therefore, the extensor and the flexor muscle are probably acting simultaneously just before landing to fix the joint and to produce the pointing action for self-landing. This mechanical relationship suggests how important it is to keep the foot balanced. Next, I would like to consider the function of deep digital flexor muscle during first two thirds of the stance phase. It seems that the force is produced by the load from movement of horse's body indicated by the black arrow. It may be acted forward and downward through the fetlock joint. This force tends to make the toe rise up mechanically, indicated by sky blue arrow, and it may probably the heel to sink into the ground, indicated by light green arrow. So, the deep digital flexor muscle has to act strongly and pull the cuffing bone in the direction of the red arrow to distribution the load onto the toe or the whole ground surface of the foot. This could be called stabilizing action of deep digital flexor muscle, and this function may also produce an effect of foot gripping in the ground. However, the cuffing bone is not actually moved when the flexor action, and it stays on the ground at the mid-support. So the flexor is stretched, and the tension of the tendon segment resists the sinking of fetlock joint. The flexor seems to provide a suspending action to fetlock joint through the stance phase. I would like to consider the function of superficial digital flexor muscle during the first two thirds of the stance phase. At the pastern joint, the force indicated by pink color on the diagram is probably produced by severe flexion of the joint at the mid-support. The activity of muscle seems to prevent dislocation on the pastern joint, resisting to the overflexion. Furthermore, this muscle also a suspending action of the fetlock in a cooperation with deep digital flexor muscle. Next, I would like to discuss about the function of these muscles at the breakover. This diagram on left shows again the activity pattern of two flexor and extensor muscles with a stick picture. Upper half of the diagram shows a pattern in horse, and the lower half shows a pattern in dog. In dog, there is high activity of the flexor muscle at the breakover, although in horse there is no activity at this time. It is clear that dog produces its breakover action using the flexor muscle activities. However, the horse must need another source of power other than muscle activity to produce its breakover action. The horse may use elastic energy stored in the long tendon segment, including check ligament, during mid-support for generating the breakover action. Traditional thinking about the role of the tendon segment during this event is probably right. This diagram shows an Ekba shoe and its principle of fitting in Japan. The Ekba shoe is well used as one of therapeutic shoes for horses with tendonitis and laminitis. One of the functions of these shoes is to serve as a stabilizer for the heel of the foot. So the shoe heel or bar should be extended to the line of the bar, like the drawing picture. I would like to discuss the effect on the horse of wearing a long heel of Ekba shoe. As we have seen, the major force of the foot is applied on the heel portion along the mid-support face, indicated by light green arrow on the upper diagram. The large force on the heel may cause the shoe heel to sink into the ground in the direction indicated by red arrow. This situation requires the deep digital flexor muscle to be very active to counter this heel sinking and distribute the load onto the toe or the whole ground surface of the foot. If a long-heeled shoe is used, the force distribute to the long heel or Ekba part of the shoe, and that part of the shoe disturb to sink the heel on the ground. We consider the effect of a long heel may decrease the stress on the flexor muscle at mid-support face. The bar shoes or long-heeled shoe may improve the stabilizing effect of the foot. This diagram shows a hypothesis about the effect of superficial digital flexor muscle wear long-heeled shoe at mid-support face. Torque of fetlock joint may be reduced as a result of the closure of the placement of the horse of the fetlock joint. In this case, the suspending function of the flexor muscle may not be required as much with a long-heeled shoe than with a short-heeled shoe. From here, it is the last part of my presentation. I would like to explain about horseshoeing in Japan. This slide shows a traditional horse riding style. It is called yabusame, that have been one of battle-trained horse soldiers in samurai era more than 150 years ago. Currently, some of horse riding group enjoy the Japanese traditional equitation. The riding clothes, saddle, and stirrups that they use are almost the same design as traditional type. But horseshoes and shoeing method are current. As we have seen, current horseshoeing in my country have begun at 150 years ago. Before that, it had used straw sandal for the horseshoe, like this picture. I think there are some difference in detail of current Japanese horseshoeing method compared to the United States. However, it may be close to the United States style, little by little, as a lot of Japanese Farrier competed in the contest of the American Farriers Association. Even in this situation, I would like to introduce two Japanese styles that will not change future. This photo shows a Japanese type hoof knife. This was developed by Japanese Army in 1922 based on the mowing sickle. It would be easy to understand by watch video than to my poor and stranger English explanation. This knife is a good for us, as it is able to trim hard hoof without much effort. Please pay attention to how to use the Japanese hoof knife in this video. I don't have any comment, and I don't guarantee his trimming skill. Next, this photo shows a shoe heel cutter. We can easily correct the heel length by using this cutter when fitting in the shoeing. It is not necessary preparation a lot of different size shoes. Thank you for attention. I'm sorry, it's very fast to finish. I'm sorry. Thank you for attention. I hope that this presentation will be helpful for everyone. I will take any of your questions. However, my answer will be in Japanese language only.